Welcome back, everyone. Tim Lukai here, host of the Maverick River podcast, Conversations in the Wild. And this is a podcast that's kind of inspired around conversations we might have in the wild. And what I've noticed as a pastor for men over the years is that guys don't tend to open up necessarily in everyday life. We keep things on the surface. We talk about sports or work or whatever. But when we're out in the wild doing something, shoulder to shoulder, I have noticed that we tend to get honest and real and have meaningful conversations that are necessary, because men need to be honest and to share. And so this podcast is meant to inspire those kind of conversations that you might have out in the wild on a hike or surfing or skiing or who knows what. So I get to have this conversation with my friend Rob Nelson in this episode, and I do believe it will be inspirational to you because he's suffered great loss in his life. He lost a dear loved one, and I'll let him tell that story. But the way that he talks about it, the pain that he experienced for him and his wife, but also how they navigated and leaned in to Christ through that process, and they've persevered through the pain and through the loss. But this is an amazing episode. One may be good to share with someone that's going through a really difficult time, specifically a loss of a loved one. But I'm really encouraged by Rob and the ministry that he has called God Just Wins. He has a book that just recently was released called God Just Wins, a podcast. He's a coach. But for me, he's a dear friend, and he really lives out what he preaches, and that's hope, optimism, and encouragement. And he has always been an encourager to me. He comes alongside me, and he is always lifting me up and sharing joy and hope and optimism. So enjoy today's episode. Please continue to share, review, and spread the word. God bless and enjoy. All right, welcome everyone to Maverick River Podcast, Conversations in the Wild. Speaking of wild, we have my wild friend Rob Nelson, who just killed a giant buck in the middle, I think, of somewhere in Colorado. Rob, now you have to talk about it, but welcome to Conversations in the Wild. One guy that gets out and kills things in the wild often. Rob, welcome.
Good to be with you. You know, it is an awesome experience. It actually was a bull elk, and been hunting for many, many years. And early on, when I first introduced my son to hunting, we went the first 5 seasons without successfully knocking down an animal. And so preparing for our 6th season, he sees me getting out the gear, and he knows we're going to be out in these wilderness areas. And he goes, "Oh, Pops, are we going to be hiking with a gun again?" And I go, "Oh, son, hold on. We are hunting." But it obviously was just hiking with a gun for the first 5 years. But, you know, the beauty about being out in the wilderness, and Maverick River is so, tied to this, is you get out in these wilderness areas and you see God, you hear God, you feel that kind of connectivity when you see his creation.
Yes.
And hunting certainly brings all of that out, because when you go on these hunts, you're up at Dark 100 and hiking into your hunting areas, you know, at 2:30, 3 in the morning, the black of night. I mean, we had so many nights of that where literally I'm bear crawling up rockscapes because I can't see anything in order to get into these hunt areas. But once you're in, you have the dynamic of all of the sights that change as light's first coming up, and the colors change, and the environment changes, and the weather changes, and just sitting there and seeing that. And then you're obviously quiet, trying to go unnoticed with these animals that can hear you from miles away, see you from hundreds of meters away, smell you at virtually all times. So they know you're there, and you're trying to somehow, some way blend in, but you get quiet. And I've always said, you know, and it's part of my coaching, get quiet so you can hear the whispers of God. And the wilderness does that. And so I think it's a magical experience. And then obviously I'm out there with my son, and we have those moments where, you know, you see these things, and you can just tell from facial expressions, if you're not talking, you know, eyes flare when we're looking at this sunrise. And then we both look to each other and go, "That's cool. That is something to see."
It's
And then
awesome.
add wildlife to the mix, and it's just wildly dynamic. It's awesome.
So tell us about this last. I mean, you sent me a picture of this massive. You said a something buck, right?
Bull elk, yeah,
A bull elk. And how big? And tell us a little bit about that kill. And
yeah.
are you beyond the part where you feel bad pulling the trigger and killing an animal that large?
I have no problems with it, either at the end of my trigger or at the end of my fork. And so,
I'm still waiting for one of your wild game dinner
yeah,
invitations. You've talked about
well,
it,
oh,
and I just have yet to be invited. I'm just
oh, I'm going
waiting.
to get you. The meat feast is something else. Elk burgers that are 3/4 pounders. I fondly nickname these things when you load them up with, mac and cheese and bacon. And I
Oh
fondly
wow.
call these elk burgers the triple bypass, but they are
Mm-hmm.
good. And no, I don't have remorse over that. I mean, I think that the animals, of course, are beauty. Uh, but we use all the meat. It's no different than heading to the market for us. We're just doing it in a
Sure.
wilderness environment. But the bull elk itself, hunts are difficult, and we hunting with my son. He wants to place us in areas that are very treacherous to get into, just
Mm-hmm.
steep ravines, high elevation areas. Footing's bad. A lot of times you're dealing with the elements, whether that be snow or ice or rain, and so it's hard work. There's no kidding around about it. It's hard work, but this particular bull that I sent you a picture of, that was, relatively speaking, for my son, a very easy shot. It was 257 yards away. And as I've shared with you in the past, my son is a trained sniper, and so he can do things with a rifle that I can't even think of. Arguably, 257 yards by hunting terms isn't a long shot, but it was just as we predicted. Right at the beginning of dusk, these bulls, in fact, a herd of bulls, which was kind of unusual. There
Mm.
was 10, 11 bulls that started to migrate out of the aspen grove and into the open area. And it just is so magnificent to see them, uh, very cautiously step their way forward. You're trying to select which bull out of that group of bulls is the one that you want to go after, and it's based on size, obviously. And so the shot was fired. The bull took 3 steps and then dropped. And the cool thing from a father-son perspective is my son and I turned to each other, and then he puts a squeeze on me that I couldn't breathe. I had no air for about a minute as he's hooting and hollering and just hugging on me. And I think, okay, that's the moment. Those are the times where you go, okay, there's the memory maker that I'm going to carry forward. So of course it's elk hunting, but these kinds of things, father son moments come up with or without a knocking down a bull. It's certainly more fun when you get one, but
Sure.
it's you earn your right.
So your son, and we'll get into some of the fatherhood stuff in a bit, but your son is or was a Navy SEAL, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's currently serving in that role. Exactly.
And so when you go hunting with a Navy SEAL, do you even bother bringing your own gun, or you just kind of hold his ammo? How does that work?
Well, we each have our own rifle, but more and more it's that transition happens. He's highly trained, and so he's applying things that he's trained up with, whether it's moving and paying attention to wind patterns, or positioning, or when to move and how to move. More and more, it's son coaching up dad on what to do,
Yeah.
and a lot of it is just, hey pops, do exactly as I'm doing.
So
Don't
that
dare.
particular deer was that his kill or your kill?
The one I sent you was his kill.
Okay.
And then my kill happened about 5 days earlier, and
Nice.
in similar kind of context, shot at the end of the day. It's good and bad when you shoot, knock down a bull at the end of the day. You're still then have all the responsibilities of field dressing it, quartering it, and then hiking out. And with my bull, we went into the evening, but I don't have the same capacity with 50 pound packs. He's humping out 70 pound packs. I'm carrying maybe 40 to 50, but
Sure.
it's nighttime by the time you get to that point to start packing out. And in the kill that I had, that was 5.5 miles of nighttime hiking out through ravines and just rough terrain. I got back to the Yukon and I was just gassed. I had
Oh,
nothing
sure.
left. And so, like I said, it's hard work, but yeah, I follow my son's coaching, and he's got me shooting now out to about 650 meters, which for me is a
Hey,
long shot. But
yeah,
it's when you have the right type of rifle and scope, and you get enough rounds in terms of the range and get comfortable with it. In today's technology, it's much easier.
that's awesome. I love that you get to do that with your son too. What a special thing that you guys will never forget. And
Yeah,
um, you're right. There's a lot of parallels into the work of Maverick River, into the hunts you do with your son. And I think where I want to start today, I mean, some of the name of this podcast is Conversations in the Wild. And I, in my own life and for talking and working with men, I've just seen when you're out in the wild doing something, and that doesn't even need to be something as kind of adventurous as a hunt. It could be on a golf course, it could be going on a hike, a walk through the woods. But when we're shoulder to shoulder, us guys, and we often tend to move eventually into having these honest, authentic conversations about what really matters in life, our trials, our victories, our pains. And naturally, we don't do that as guys. And so that's kind of some of what we want to do. This podcast is to inspire these honest conversations. And so we're going to get into your story. But before we even get into your story, I know you're involved in men's ministry. And this Maverick River is all about helping build men's ministries. I'd love to hear your thoughts on why men's ministry is so important in today's culture and how maybe it's even impacted you in your own local church.
yeah. Well, a couple thoughts come to mind. One is, and we're all seeing it, everyone has their defenses up, and everyone has their storefront, especially with the advent of social media. Everything that gets presented, it may be real in the moment, but it may be a moment out of the 67,000 moments that didn't look quite so good.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody showcases their story chest of, oh, look at this and look at that. And it builds up these walls and it builds up these defenses. And in many cases, it builds up FOMO, where people are looking at each other's screens and going, oh gosh, if only my life
Mm.
was that easy. If only it was that simple. And so I think you mentioned it, something, the key thing for men is that shoulder to shoulder influence. And whether it's a golf course or it's a trailhead or it's a mountainscape, it all produces the same thing. Where I always call it the three questions, the three how are yous. So you get
Mm.
shoulder to shoulder with another man and you ask the question, hey, how are you? And the response is, I'm grand. I'm on top of it. Life is the best. And then number two, how are you though? He goes, well, I'm pretty good and things are okay. And then the third, how are you? Oh gosh, I'm actually struggling in a
Mm.
mighty way. And for whatever reason, it takes those three how are yous or those first three holes or the first 3 miles, whatever the influence is, for men to just let down their guard and then be transparent. And I think there's less and less opportunity to do that. So these men's events, these men's ministries, these focus on men, helping me get out of the way of myself is critical, especially in this time where there's chaos, right? There's a lot of tension, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. There's this overwhelming volume of uncertainty. And this is nothing to do with the age of the man. So young men in their
Right.
teens and 20s and 30s and all the way up to late 70s and 80s and beyond, every man is dealing with the same playing field, and there's chaos. And then for the younger men, the real liability in facing that environment, that war zone, if you will, is then they're turning to TikTok to try and figure out life. And social media has its role for sure. It's a great piece of entertainment, or pieces of entertainment for all of us. But when you're dealing with critical decision making as a man or a dad or a husband or a man trying to just find his way, TikTok is not the resource that's going to lead, guide, and direct you successfully, in my opinion.
Wow. I mean, this is profound stuff. TikTok is not the place to seek wisdom and honesty and true wisdom. I mean, wow.
In reality,
Yeah, and reality. Well, yeah, any social media, like you said, I like the framework you used. Storefront. It looks good on the outside, but you get inside, is it really? Is it really doing okay? Maybe not. It's a facade.
yeah. And maybe some of the things are real, but they're not realistic. I love wilderness scenes. I'm on all the time looking at different hunts and different activities. I'm watching these young bucks crash down cliff tops and bluff tops and mountainsides on mountain bikes, and I'm going, that's unbelievable. In fact, this morning I was watching a mountain biker navigate his way down this mountainside, or I would say it wasn't even a mountainside; it was a cliffside.
Wow.
And so you had the trail that was zigzagging back and forth, so serpentining its way down, and the curves to get to the next section were incredibly sharp. The next section was only like 12, 15, 16 feet long, and then another hairpin. And all the while, his camera, his GoPro, is looking at what's on the left or right side of him. And literally, it's maybe 800 feet down, cliffside.
Jeez. Yeah,
And
you're
he's
done.
navigating his bike. And I look at that and I marvel, like, okay, there's nerves of steel. And I couldn't do it, but I wouldn't want to do it. I don't
No.
want to just have one hiccup, catch the front of a tire, lose my balance, and then I'm just catapulting down an 800-foot cliff. That's not for me. But
Yeah.
it entertains us all. And whether it's, you know, every Red Bull event that you can think of, where they're just pushing, defying death somehow, some way. But I think in regular lives, okay, not all of us are doing that. Not all of us are throwing the parachute out of the plane and then jumping after it, hoping to catch up. But our lives, our regular day-to-day real lives, feel that way. It has those same levels of anxiety of, oh my gosh, what do I do?
Hmm.
Or maybe more often, the analogy that I frequently use is the drive back from Las Vegas. What did I just do? I call that I call that the highway of regret, and that's, you're just flogged with every temptation known to mankind in a Vegas kind of environment. And there's a lot of rough decisions that are made. And then that long blank stare drive back to Southern California where you're just, okay, what do I do next? And whether it's that kind of extreme or just day-to-day life, where there's financial pressure or financial disruption or career disruption. Um, Young kids, when they're looking up at their dad, that's their superhero.
Hmm.
And so dad's going to take care of anything and everything. That's my dad, kind of,
Hmm.
rightfully mindset. But from a dad's perspective, there's the fear factor looking back down at their children going like, what? I don't know what I'm going to do.
Right. How do I do
And same
this?
thing in marriage. I've been married for a good length of time. My wife still kind of likes me. I'm still sleep indoors. That's my
It's great.
barometer of marriage success, right?
How long have you been married?
3.5 decades, 35 years.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I reference that all the time because, marriage, a whole nother topic, but marriage, especially in today's culture, is treated, and you've heard me say this, treated like an auto lease. I'm just going to ride 36,000 miles and then I'm trading up for something newer, faster, younger, whatever the case may be. And there's everyone in life socially has been desensitized to divorce. So it's just in the no big deal category.
Right.
And So I look at 35 years and I'm actually, especially with our history, I'm super proud of it. I'm super proud of my wife.
As you
Um,
should be.
I wouldn't want to be married to me. And yet she has been for 3.5 decades. So
Well,
we're going strong.
well, one of the things that well, I guess I'm getting ahead of it. I do want to come back to marriage, because there is another statistic that you've shared with me that I think is worth noting. But let's move into your story, because your
Yeah,
story will even set up that part of the marriage conversation. So you have quite a story. It's been riddled with some tragedy, and even the fact that somehow at one point you were a big deal on the tennis court, which I still haven't quite understood how that was. Um, so share a little bit more about Rob Nelson and your story of
sure.
faith. Mhm.
Yeah, and as every athlete goes, the older I get, the better I was. And so I'm improving massively at my age now. I think, another decade and I'm certain I'll have secure a top 10 ranking in my mind.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
I think they retired your racket in many, many different places, I'm sure.
yeah, my wife retired my racket when she didn't want to see it in the garage any longer. So yeah,
Yeah,
it wasn't a
that
big
too.
ceremony. But yeah, I had my chance in professional sports and specifically with tennis. I got introduced to tennis as a latecomer. I wasn't introduced to the sport until I was 16 years old. And by that time, many of the players have, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of experience in developing up as an athlete and a player and getting that tournament resolve and competing. So everything I did in my sport, it was on a catch-up basis. And that's kind of how I approached it. Just a blue collar approach. I grab my hard hat, my lunch pail, and head to the mines. And the mindset was, I'm just going to outwork people and hopefully find my way and catch up. And so, all the naysayers, for the younger listeners, everybody go, what the heck is a naysayer? For all those doubters, there's a lot of those people that are, trying to disrupt you, saying, hey, you're too old, you can't do that, or you're too late, or you're too tall, I'm 6'6", and all of those kinds of things. And I think part of all of our journeys is managing those negatives and pointing them towards something productive instead of destructive. And that's exactly what I did with tennis. I mean, I was obviously in love with my sport, but everything was in this hurry up offense to catch up with the athletes of my era. And there wasn't a lot of tall athletes at that time. And today's athletes, like all sports, they're grown my height, twice as wide. They can shoot the gun, outrun the bullet. They're just unbelievable athletes. But in
Mhm.
my era, there was only 6 players in the world on tour that were 6'6" or taller at that time. So there was an anomaly.
Mhm.
And so I came up through the ranks playing through high school, then on to college, and then post college. Had my turn, was out on tour for 5 years, and had my chance. I don't have any regrets on it, other than I wish I had won more. That would have been better. But I had my chance, and I ended up in that kind of in the sports realm, in that journeyman role, especially as an American player. My ranking never got any higher than 414 in the world. And in the scope of world population, you go, okay, that's cool. But relative to making a career out of professional tennis, I didn't have two nickels to rub together as I moved from tournament to tournament. So, and especially as an American player, where you don't have the same level of corporate attention unless you're in the top 20 in the world. And if you're top 20 in the world, it's a whole different category than where I spent most of my time. But I learned just valuable life lessons, and I really treat my tennis career as my master's degree.
Got
And I
it.
was fortunate because early on I was coached and mentored into having a community of men around me. And specifically, I had 10 men that surrounded me. Some of them, my dad, my stepdad, a number of coaches, other men that were just pouring into my life. And I think that more than specific athletic events, it's where I found my foundation. It's where I discovered that. And they would coach me up, they would love on me, they would get in my kitchen when stupid found me. And so it was all of those things, especially, as a young man, it's easy to get off course. And then having a community of men around you that would create pivot points and point you back in the right direction. And so my tennis career, albeit didn't spend much time up in the elite ranks of professional tennis, but it taught me valuable life lessons that I still carry through in my decision making today. When I'm faced with adversity today, when I have successes today, I've got a architecture of what to do that carries through. And from a coaching term, I always reference design, vision, and focus, just to give you a couple of key words. And the design in life is you do have an architecture. There's a format of what you're building. You're not, building a house just by showing up with nails and lumber. So you're following a plan. The vision is that you have a North Star. And for us, that's Christ. But you have a North Star that you're navigating towards. You have a destination in mind. You're not just plodding along, moving one direction and then backing up and moving another direction. So you're navigating to that North Star. And then the focus is that intensity. And you think about it in just every man's journey. There's those moments where intensity shows up, and you can see it in a man's face, where there's that conviction, eyes narrow, the jaw sets, and in a positive way. It's not even in a conflict or confrontational way, positive way of, I'm just gonna do this, period. Nothing's getting in my way. Or I'm gonna fight for my children like I've never fought before, or my marriage. I'm gonna dig in and I will not quit, period. And so I think that kind of, laser-like focus is the last piece of the puzzle in that design, vision, and focus. And all of those lessons I learned in life, sure, but I learned many of that foundationally in my career and young career as an athlete.
And then share the rest of your story.
Yeah, well, the rest of the story is, in many ways, I bill my story as just regular Joe, or more humbly, Joe Nobody, right? It's a young guy getting married, having kids, establishing a career and building a business. And there's an acronym that you may have heard me reference before. It's SITCOM. And that SITCOM acronym stands for single income, 2 children, overwhelming mortgage. And that's how life is for many of us in those early years. You're just trying to battle your way through each day, and you're trying to pay attention. What's it mean to be a father? I was talking to a young man today that he's having his firstborn December 9th. And, for all of us that are about to have a child or have children or young kids, you just jump in. You go from Tuesday, I'm not a father, to Wednesday, I'm a dad. And there's no one ringing the bell. And so it's this, at least for me, it was this, high wire act in a windstorm. I remember driving home from the hospital and just scared. I don't know how to be a dad. And I've got my wife in the car and my baby in the back. And I think I was driving 9 and 3 on the wheel at 18 miles an hour and avoiding all traffic.
I have the same exact type of experience. So
yeah.
It's very,
the early life was good though. And certainly the things that we face in our daily walk here in Orange County, California, maybe is not the same if you're in Ukraine and facing different issues. And so, relatively speaking, life is relatively easy, and we're just trying to build our way and find momentum and stay on course and navigate, towards where we want to go, kind of a thing. But for us, we got unseated. We had a life experience where our kids were aging up a little bit more. They weren't babies any longer. My daughter was 17 and son was 15. And And we ran into an event when our daughter was 16 that was just the most uncanny experience in discovering trauma. I'm on my laptop downstairs. She's on her laptop upstairs. And what she's typing on her laptop is scrolling across my screen. She's on whatever chat platform, and
Okay.
it's scrolling across my screen. She's talking with a friend on this chat, whichever medium it was, and her friend said, "Hey, how's your summer going?" And my daughter responds, "Oh, not so good." "Oh, why not so good?" And then the three letters scroll across my screen. This summer, I was raped.
Mm.
And oh my God, it's clearly one of those moments, you're just almost in disbelief that A, you're seeing it scroll across your screen, and then hold on, that's my baby girl. What are you talking
Wow.
about? What's going on? So we pulled her aside and confronted with that. I took a screenshot, printed it out, and sat her down and said, "Honey, we've got to talk. Just what's this about?" And so there, it unveiled, um, her sexual assault, and as soon as we, uh, uh, yeah, I guess, went public in the context of us discovering that she had been raped 3.5 months earlier, it triggered all of the PTSD reaction. And
Mm.
so she immediately had a severe reaction, was hospitalized,
Oh
and
no.
spent 21 days up at UCLA hospital and lost 17 pounds that she didn't have 17 to give away, and
Wow.
emerged out of that just really weakened, obviously physically, emotionally, spiritually, and then began okay, we're going to rebuild. And we surrounded ourselves. I mentioned earlier how I was surrounded by 10 men, really throughout my life, but we surrounded ourselves with advisors and counselors and mentors and neighbors and family and friends. We had a tribe that encircled us to try and navigate this life challenge and hold us together as a family and restore our daughter, from being traumatized. And 6 months later, uh, we don't understand what all the triggers are, but the bottom line is whatever number of influences, at a time where our daughter was back in school, reconnected with friends, back at work, and the coaching to us was, okay, she's on the road to recovery. It may be a long road, but she's on the road. And so all indicators were positive, and yet 6 months later, she took her own life. She committed suicide.
Mm.
And she got tricked by Satan into suicide becoming a good idea. And that
Wow.
doesn't soften it, but it's so commonplace when you talk to desperate people and depressed people and people that are fighting off despair, and they're just distraught. And suicide creeps in, and Satan whispers that maybe this is a good idea. You're going to be helping your family. You're going to be providing relief. This is resolution kinds of trickery. And our daughter got tricked. And so here we are, thinking that we're okay in life and pressing forward. And then all of a sudden, she's gone. And
Oh,
so it's a graphic story and a graphic experience. There's nothing in the world more traumatic, I can imagine, than the loss of a child.
yeah.
And so much so, the days and weeks and months that followed, there wasn't this for us, this 10 steps to victory over tragedy, or 10 ways to overcome loss. It was literally in the early days and months, it was trying to breathe, just literally trying to breathe and get to the next moment. And
Yeah.
I just remember physically how my body reacted, where
Sure.
um, I remember a friend of mine was over at the house, and he said, let's just go for a walk around the block. And if you saw me, it would have looked like I was a 150-year-old man. My
Yeah.
feet were sliding on the ground, shuffling on the ground. My footstep was maybe 12 inches in front of the next. And a walk around the block, which would normally take about 5 or 6 minutes, took me 45 minutes just to get around the block. And so it was a great illustration of the devastation, the swath of damage that comes at you physically. And
Yeah.
emotionally, you're
Yeah.
devastated.
We carry so much
Yeah,
physically.
I always describe my son's situation. He's 15 at the time, and then goes through this experience of losing his sis, and he's cast out into the middle of the ocean
Mm.
and just gasping for air. And so many of the early times am I going to survive?
Wow.
And there's doubt there. There's uncertainty there. Can I do this? Whether it's from my wife's perspective as a mom and wife, um, or my perspective as dad and father, or our son's perspective as child, youngest child. Um, Maybe not saying the words, but we're all looking at each other in different moments, different environments, going, can I do this? Can I do this? And that was a real, maybe unstated wonder. There were times where I said to people that were surrounding me, I don't know if I can do this, or how does God expect me to handle this?
Right.
One of the most treasured experiences that I had, and this was a few months later, but I was at that time working my business and then coaching back at my alma mater at UC Irvine and coaching the men's tennis team. And if you've been up to UC Irvine, there's on the campus, there's this field above the different athletic venues. It's called Crawford Field. And I remember
Okay.
walking across Crawford Field to the athletic department, and I poured into this one office of one of the athletic directors. Her name is Deidre, just a magnificent woman. And and I just had a moment where I collapsed. I literally sunk from leaning against the wall to being seated in her office, and I just kept repeating myself. I
Hmm.
can't believe God expects me to handle my daughter dying in the arms of her father, and which is where Haley passed, in my arms.
Wow.
And I can't believe this. She died in the arms of her father. She died in the arms of her father. And then finally, Deidre stopped me and said, Rob, listen to yourself. Your daughter died in the arms of her father. Your daughter died in the arms of her eternal father. And it was just a massive
Mm.
shift in recognizing, okay, yeah, we had a worldly event, but then we had the positive. We had our daughter dying in the arms of Jesus Christ. And it doesn't make it all go away, or it's not rainbows and unicorns, with that realization in the context of still dealing with trauma, but it makes sense in the context. Our daughter, nickname was Teaspoon, um, she's with Christ, she's
Mhm.
with Jesus. And it's exactly where we prayed her to be. It's just out of turn. But what's helped my wife and I, and our role as mom and dad to our son, is that we collectively know where our daughter is, and it's
Mhm.
where we want to be.
Sure.
And so we go, okay, traumatic for sure, but it has a great ending. And so I think that in itself, that moment that Deidre kind of reframed my mindset and just challenged me, hey, listen to yourself. Your daughter died in the arms of her father, and it gave us something tangible to hold on to.
Right.
And it was that lifeline, the rope that was extended to us that we could grab onto in the middle of the ocean and go, oh, hold on, we're going to survive. And maybe not necessarily knowing how, but we knew that we are going to survive. And our story is, post life tragedy is unfolding exactly that way. we're not just surviving, but we're surviving in a healthy way. And
Mhm.
we're
How long did
optimistic
it
about
take?
life.
How long did it take you to feel like you're not just surviving, but we're surviving in a healthy way, and we're
Well, part of it is just the time of it, and it ebbs and flows. I mean, there's still
sure.
moments that I get flattened out on the ground, and the most graphic picture, I'm sobbing and I've got snot pouring out of my nose, and it's not pretty, right? Those
Mm,
moments come still to this day, and it's been a long time since she's passed. But I think there was that reassurance, and this is where um, I had an experience just yesterday, last night. We were going through this prayer exercise, and just with our eyes closed, and someone describing this scene. Think of a place where you love to be. And I had this experience where I was on a, I guess you'd call, well, in Australian terms they call it a walkabout, but
yeah, yeah.
I had created this experience where I took my dog and went out to Catalina Island in this wilderness environment and camped for 4 days. And it was just my dog and I. And so we had just such an experience of being on the backside of Catalina Island in these different wilderness areas, buffalo that are meandering through your campsite. You're seeing wilderness, and then these landscapes that were just so unbelievably stunning. But I kind of defaulted back to that moment when I was being coached with this prayer of think of a place where you were just good, you were right. And I defaulted to that wilderness scene. And then
Hmm.
the question or the prompting was, okay, Christ is right there. What would he say to you?
Hmm.
And just last night, I had the exact same prompting that's carried me through this episode and carried our family through this episode. And it was the affirmation or the confirmation of, I've got you.
Mm.
I've got you. And that's what's carried us. There's never been this moment of doubting Christ, doubting God, doubting the Holy Spirit. We don't look at the loss of our daughter as an oops moment where, oh God, turned away and missed that.
Right,
Sorry,
right.
you know. And that's been evidenced in so many different experiences as we've journeyed, where God's right here. He's present, and he's reassuring us, I've got you.
Mm.
And so I look at that, and that's the powerful reminder. I mean, it is affirming and calming to know where your daughter is, or know where your children are, or know where your family is. Those are all reassurance for sure. But just where you feel that prompting, and you've had those
I,
moments, Tim,
and
I've got you.
yeah, I think what you're describing in some of those the most tragic of moments where you've sensed that peace, it just feels like that's what scripture's talking about when you experience the peace that surpasses all understanding. Because how else could you get there in lieu of the circumstances? And it sounds like the Father has reassured you more times than not, like through his peace. It's the most tangible experience through the loss, right?
Yeah, and I think about that coming full circle back to the power of men going shoulder to shoulder, is that there can be those moments of reassurance. And it's not fixing things or necessarily resolving things, or people that are in the midst of whatever life challenge, and all of a sudden it just evaporates and everything's grand. But it's just knowing that you're not alone, and that you
Mm-hmm.
are seen and you are heard, and life's moments are not by mistake. There's certainly mistake making, but from God's perspective, it's not by mistake. And then there's that, God using men to other men saying, hey, I've got you. I'm right here.
Right, right.
And you have
Mm.
those moments. I mean, think about your retreats, and some of the wilderness experiences that you've had when you get a group of men out away from all the distractions and away
Hmm.
from the smartphones and away from the day-to-day everything gnawing at them, and they can get raw and real, and then be assured and reassured that there's this group event. It's a community event.
Yeah.
And
And
this
you got
this
to have
whole
brothers
concept,
to,
there's a, you look at the self-help gurus in the world, and that are extending the mindset, oh, if it's gonna be, it's up to me. And I
mm,
think it's one of the worst messaging in our world today, that you can successfully go it alone. The self-made man, oh, I did it
mm,
on my own.
right.
And if you're looking, in my eyes, for validation that Satan is real, Satan
Mhm.
is echoing that message. Ah, you don't need them. Splinter off, veer off course. Hey, go it on, do it alone. And
Right.
then all of a sudden, alone is great until you move from predator to prey in wilderness terms, and
Yeah.
exactly like the old adage, to the divide and conquer. And that's what Satan is going to trick people into do. I think that's what Satan used to trick my daughter. Hey,
Mm,
you don't need to tell mom or dad about how you've been traumatized. Go it alone. You'll be fine.
yeah.
And then, it proved up to be too much. She emotionally or mentally tilted.
Hmm.
It was too much.
It's too much. Can't do it alone.
Cannot.
Yeah, and that's so much of the message that we want to portray with Maverick River and getting involved in your local church, whether that's in a life group, men's group, doesn't matter. Just we need each other and we need to be honest about what's really going on. And we so often feel like we just have to, like you said, the guru saying, I can do this on my own. And we really can't.
Yeah. And in the transparency, I mean, nobody likes to air their dirty laundry and say, "Oh, look how I've screwed up over here," or look at my weakness there, or look at how I've submitted to temptation on this front. Nobody wants that. I'm not
No.
looking for it. I mean, I make plenty of grand decisions, I'll call them that, that are just, right where the bookends of stupid and stupider come together. And yet there's a safe environment to go, yeah, I'm struggling. And just saying those words, the shoulders drop, the breathing becomes less animated. There's less feeling like you're on that cliff face, just holding on with three fingers and a 300-pound Samoan jumping on them. It's, you go like, oh, hold on, I'm going to be okay. And then to be met with um, the response, which you've seen so often, of, oh, I'm right there with you right now. And there's camaraderie from that. Or I've been there and I know the terror of that. And so there's coaching in that.
Yeah.
Or the foresight of, gosh, I'm about to venture down this exact same road, and lead, guide, and direct me. Help me make a different decision than the falling into the trauma of what you're experiencing right now. And the traumatized go, oh gosh, let me tell you, it's crystal clear. I'd turn left here and I would turn right over there, and I would run like I've never run before in this environment or that environment. But I think that's what men are called to do. And I think what's missing in large part, in terms of just simply crying out with that transparency of like, I need help,
Yeah. Yeah.
or in more emphatic terms, help, where you're just falling out of the plane with no parachute. You need help, right? And it's okay. I think the men that define manhood for me are those that can do that and have done that. And the young men, where I see so much optimism and hope and encouragement, is where they're learning in the early years how to ask. They're
Yeah.
being coached up how to ask. And then for so many men in their the final third of their lives, you and I cross paths with so many people in their 60s or 70s or 80s, and they're going, I'm all done. I've got nothing to do. I'm either not usable, or I'm not relevant, or I'm yesterday's news. And I think when you hit that last third, It's God's call to action. God brought you through all the mileage of the first 2/3 so that you can take that and pour back into the people that are following you and help them navigate and help them plot a course or extend a hand when there's a rescue moment, or to tackle them, and get in their kitchen when they deserve the right. I don't know how many 80-year-olds I've been tackled by, but you get the point.
Get the point. So one of the things you've shared with me, and I think it would be a good transition, uh, is marriage. And obviously you shared you've been married for 35 years, which is an unbelievable thing you had said, I'm proud of that. And you should be, especially in today's culture where you use the language marriage and the commitment of marriage, the sanctity of marriage, and has been desensitized. But one of the things you've shared, when there's a percentage, a very low percentage that I know of when a couple loses a child, it's very, very, very high probability of divorce. And you guys you've broken that stereotype and percentage. So talk about marriage, talk about that statistic that you had shared the other day.
Yeah, and it's a daunting percentage. You lose a juvenile child to suicide, and it's a 93% divorce rate.
Wow.
And Satan is purposefully, deliberately using these kinds of life moments just to destroy, just to disrupt. And no better victory for Satan is the family that's imploding, with mom veering down one course and dad veering down another course, and the child or children going, whoa, what just happened? There's not clear identity for kids on what to do. They just see all of a sudden mom or dad or both are gone. And then at whatever age, trying to navigate all the same things. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a very daunting task to overcome that. And it still is. We work hard at it. It's my wife will be the first to say after 35 years, and this may be a surprise, but marriage is not easy, and marriage to me is not easy. And so, we've just fought and scratched, but we've done this on a community basis. It is not just Rob and Deborah, barreling down the road of, oh, we've got this, we don't need any help. It's been openly and frequently asking for help and getting direction and getting rescue and getting, whether it's recognition of things that you have to pay attention to, just the block and tackle kinds of components. Hey, Rob, Deborah feels left behind, and you're veering down this course that you think is your destiny, but your wife is receding back into the shadows behind you. Stop. Stop dead in your tracks. Turn around and go back to your wife and make certain she's shoulder to shoulder with you as you press ahead. There's many life moments like that following the loss of Haley. And so I think that we just had clear coaching. And I know there is a positive pride, okay, we're told not to be prideful, but there's these pride moments. There's probably a better word for it, but there's these pride moments. Like when we had our 25th anniversary and our son was at college back at University of Alabama, and I called him up and I was just, a kick around conversation. Hey, son, what are you doing? He says, I'm walking around campus right now, bragging on my parents. And he go, what are you talking about? What do you mean you're bragging on your parents? And he goes, my parents are celebrating their 25th anniversary today. And Pops, my generation doesn't have a lot of these stories. It's the 5-year marriage and 10-year marriage and 11-year marriage. And then it's the stepkids and the second marriage and the third and fourth marriage. And so, yeah, I'm walking around talking to my friends and professors about my mom and dad's marriage. I mean, what a moment, right? You hear that from a dad's perspective. That was a memory maker. Amazing. And so I look to that, and that pours fuel into, the fire of I'm going to have that conviction. And it's not that hardship goes away or temptation goes away or Satan goes away. It's not that at all. We're not in a safe zone by any stretch. In fact, I feel like the more we're married, the more that Satan wants to hunker down and attack and say, okay, you did 35. You're never going to see 36. Let me try these things on you.
Wow.
And in whatever the time frame is, the number of years, there's that sense that we all have is like, I'm not just fighting Satan. I'm in a full-on assault right now. I'm getting flogged at every turn, every direction, whether I look up, look down, look left, look right. I'm getting crushed by Satan. And those aren't marriage builder moments unless you make them marriage builder moments. And the one thing I can say that's been so impactful is there hasn't been a moment, and there's moments clearly, let me put it this way, there's moments where we're going like, again, can I do this? But there hasn't been a moment of I'm not going to do this, or I won't do this, or I don't want to do this. And I think that's maybe a difference maker, where we've just been able to be pushed or push through those moments where Satan is on the ultra attack and just be reconvicted of no, just one foot in front of the other, just one foot in front of the other. I've used that analogy a lot of times, Tim, with just in these life moments. I get a lot of questioning. How do you do it? How do you survive? And sometimes it's easier and sometimes it's difficult. But in those difficult moments, I always use that word picture where you stand up, you lean forward just far enough to whether you either have to take a step or you're going to fall.
Yeah.
And human nature has you take a step. It's coded into us that you take a step. And it doesn't matter whether it's a shuffle or a leap or a bound. The point of it is that you're making progress. You're purposefully, deliberately, intentionally choosing to make progress. And sometimes, like I said, it's easy, and sometimes it's just pulling teeth without Novocaine. But you stand up, lean forward just far enough, and it forces you to take a step.
Amen. One day at a time, as they say, or one step at a time is more what you're referring to. And
yeah, and that's a real word picture in all of our lives.
Yeah. Regardless of it, it may not be in the marriage context. It could be with kids. It could be with health. It could be with a lot of things. And tell us about God Just Wins. That's a big part of what you're doing now, and you have your own platform. And I'd love for the listeners to hear more about what you're doing with God Just Wins.
Yeah, and it's a great story. And God Just Wins. It's extending messages in a lot of different mediums, a lot of different ways, but there's the same three principles, the same three things that we are crying out to hear right now, and that is on optimism, hope, and encouragement. And I've yet to shake hands with somebody and talk about God Just Wins, and it's themed on optimism, hope, and encouragement, and have them pull back and say, oh, no, I don't need any of that. I'm all good.
Yeah,
and so
right.
I think, we all need that. And especially where it moves us from. Optimism moves us away from pessimism, right? Hope moves us away from feeling hopeless. Encouragement moves us away from feeling discouraged.
Yes.
And the world is a Gatling gun of the three negatives right now. The world is delivering pessimism, hopelessness, and discouragement. And so you do have to bolster yourself. You do have to purposefully go on, okay, what am I going to allow in? And you need the defense shields to deliberately resist or purge all those negatives, and then purposefully replace them with things that are hopeful and encouraging. And so the ministry is just about that. It's had a great evolution in terms of how it's unfolded, from just these daily writings to my son when he was first going through boot camp in the military, which is the foundation of it, to February 18th, 2019, where I posted the first GW, as I reference it, GW post on Facebook, and watching this wave unfold of no audience, 0 followers, to reaching 1.8 million people around the world, and how that's led to one of our local radio stations, the largest Christian broadcaster in Southern California, K-Wave, getting a hold of those writings and say, gosh, we want to air those on the radio. And it's now being broadcast daily across all of Southern California, a moment that I would have never guessed at.
Amazing.
And then a publisher that is talking to me about GW, and he asked the question, well, how much have you actually written? And at that time, I had written over 1,300 pages of content on optimism, hope, and encouragement. And the publisher's response is, you've got a book already. In what it translated now, with just this month, the formal launch, it's translated into 4 books, all under the same title, God Just Wins. And they've been segmented into 4 different volumes. The first, which is coming out now, called Looking Upward. And then it's followed by Looking Inward, Looking Outward, and Looking Forward. And
wow.
4 directionals that are designed in the themes of things that I've written to, just to get people going like, hold on, I can do this, instead of I can't. And having that conviction, a little bit of burn in their belly, right? Where they're going to go, okay, hold on, I'm going to step forward, or I'm going to stand up and lean forward. Even if I don't want to, or even if I don't think I can, I'm just gonna. And you can see it in the transition of people where they just get a little bit of momentum and a little bit of conviction, and then a little bit more and a little bit more, and it builds on itself. And then all of a sudden, life's challenges are being dealt with. Again, it's not this pixie dust, this magic elixir where all problems go away, but it's equipping people with weapons to fight all of that negativity that we're flogged with. So the God Just Wins story, it continues to unfold. I have a very clear vision for it and where I hope it goes in terms of people groups and audiences, and we'll just have to see how God is going to open up doors. But
can we get a hold of book 1? Like,
What's
is
that?
it on, is book 1, how do our listeners go find that? Is that on Amazon, or how do we find that?
It will be, but you can just go directly to our website, God Just Wins, plural, godjustwinsbooks.com.
Awesome.
Yeah, and it's readily available. And so, and as I tell everybody, Tim, as I tell you, if you like it, tell me. If you don't, lie to me. And I think we're all good.
I'd have a hard time lying to you. I would probably just tell you the truth. Oh man, thanks for sharing all this wisdom and part of your story. And I know that you shared at a men's barbecue the other night, and one of my friends said, I went on a deep dive of Rob Nelson, and he went and found podcasts and all sorts of stuff. So you're an inspiration. Your story is one of much pain and triumph, but I'm sure it will help many that are experiencing, a loved one or even mental health issues in their own regard. So any closing thoughts of encouragement maybe that you could leave us with?
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I think in those darkest moments, and where there doesn't seem to be any resolution or any answer or any explanation, where you truly feel alone, is the perfect time to again and again and again, God, I just need you right now. I just need you. And the irony of it is, God isn't going to respond to that. Oh, okay, Tim, I didn't know. I'll show up now, or just a minute, Tim. I'm busy right now, but I'll get to you. Just hang in there.
Yeah.
And God's going to meet you exactly where you are when you're there. And the phrase that I always use is his presence is going to be felt exactly at the time that you need it. And he'll fully equip you with what you need when you need it. And he'll be present. He's present.
Amen.
And so it's again, it's not an immediate fix, but just to know that you're not alone, or just to know that you extend your hand in desperation even, and you feel that hand coming into yours and knowing that they're pulling you up, or you collapse into somebody's arms and you feel not just the arms of another person around you, but you feel through them the arms of Jesus around you. And it's like, Tim, you're going to be okay. I've got you.
Amen. Amen. Do you mind closing us in a word of prayer?
Yeah, for sure. Heavenly Father, life is challenging and we are under attack. And where do you turn to find the things that you need? And it's easy to turn to social media. It's easy to turn to entertainment. It's easy to turn to distraction. But Jesus, I know my journey. I've turned to you, and that's my encouragement. Just turn to Christ and turn to people that know Christ and surround yourselves with them. And turn to communities that can link arms with you. It is not a go it alone proposition. So no matter where you are, no matter what you're wrestling with, just that bold stance of help. I need help. I can't do it alone. And then over time, feeling that momentum, like I described, begin to build, and you get that fire in your belly, and you get a little bit of conviction, and you go, hold on. You can move from I can't to I can. And then you do. And then it continues to build from there. And it all starts with just that ask. And so for any of us that are challenged and fighting for things and being crushed by things, just the ask. And that's my prayer, that Jesus, you'll provide all of us in those moments the ability and the desire and the boldness and the courageousness to go, okay, I'm going to ask for help. And just trusting and knowing that you'll answer, not just sometimes or not maybe or not perhaps, but you will answer and lead and guide and direct. Maybe a long journey, but you'll be on the journey and you'll be able to just experience that relationship with you. We love you, Jesus. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Awesome, Rob. Thanks so much for being on and sharing your story. We'll make sure to put all the website, the books, all the ways that we can link people over to you on the show notes. So thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, awesome. And thanks to Maverick River for leading and guiding and directing so many men in the right direction. It's awesome.
Amen.